What's up, fellow lords of gaming? Welcome back to another episode of Marvel Future Revolution. Today we take a deep dive look at Scarlet Witch's skills. So we've already done videos for Scarlet Witch's potential and her specializations, and it goes without saying that even with inside her skill set, she basically has a utility set that is unmatched by any character inside the game. I definitely think you're going to see a lot more diversity in terms of play with this character than you will in others. Even depending on the game modes that you're playing, I think you're going to see a lot of differences in people's builds. Scarlet Witch, like I've said it and I'll say it over and over again, kudos to the development team. She represents, at least for me, the first character that I've seen who has represented some sort of cohesion in terms of the foundational aspects of the game, understanding how characters are going to work within inside Omega War, PvP, PvE, Spec Ops, and all the things across the board. She just has a whole host of things available to her. Now, don't check off these as skills that I'm necessarily using. I'm still playing around with the character. These are just some of the things that are pushed out there. There are other skills that I think that you really need to take a look at, like Witch's Tongue. You definitely, two of the skills that I think that you're really going to want to pay attention to are Language of Demise and Witch Tongue, just like Danny Koo said, and we'll get to the reason why. First up, though, we've got Hex Projection. So this is a Hex Energy class skill, and I've looked at and thought of the Hex Energy Hex Wave as one of the better classes inside her skill set. There is doing a great amount of damage at 890%, nearly roughly 900%. But I really like the fact that this is a skill that's basically creating a barrier for her as well of her max HP. So it's similar to like Doctor Strange's Gateway Summoning skill, in the sense that, you know, it's still firing off that long skill animation where she's seemingly stuck in place. However, with her, they've given her the ability to give her some sort of super armor while she's casting that skill. So she's getting a barrier for, you know, roughly 40% of her total HP. That's amazing to me. If you notice, a lot of Scarlet Witch's skills are going to have similar effects as well. So like, for instance, Hex Force Field is another potential good skill inside here, because not only does it give you that same barrier that lasts for 10 seconds, but it also acts as this big explosion that's going to knock down and apply that immobility while also applying a good guard break on you as well. A little bit lower in damage, roughly half, but we're looking at 21.8 seconds versus and 24 stamina. So the stamina cost between the two could be viewed, the cooldown stamina cost could be viewed as a significant effect. So those are the two skills I would pay attention to inside of the Hex Projection category. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with Hex Bolt, really nice opening skill, or Hex Projection, Hex Lightning, especially the fact that Hex Lightning is a very low cooldown but a very high stamina cost, but is dealing 931. The thing I don't necessarily like so much about this skill is that it's a single target damage, but this could be a very good skill inside PvP to use. This is what I mean by her utility. In each of the windows, there's at least 2 or 3 skills that are highly viable for you to use, which is a lot different, in my opinion, than other classes, other characters. So then we've got Chaos Magic, which is a Chaos class skill. The skill I like the most from here was Chaos Fear. This one applies damage over time, and it applies damage roughly of her 13% of her attack, and then it also applies instability when the skill lands, which gives instability basically for Scarlet Witch is basically an increase of stamina consumption and consumes additional guard dodge gauge by 30% when you use damage. So it basically puts a nullifier on a character. Like, it puts a mental, if you get the instability from her character, then you need to be aware that you are going to have more stamina consumption for your skills, and that using that dodge gauge is going to reduce the availability of your dodge. More than likely, this is going to represent by at least a bar or so like that inside there. So it also deals 995% damage. This is really, really good, right? So it's a great skill. Now, like I said, again, that doesn't mean that some of the other skills aren't as good. It's just that I like that one the most inside that tree. Chaos Magic Storm still applies the same skill sets. It's just at a lower stamina cost and that required stamina as well. So it's something that you could work in, because this is a skill that is going to be a lot more usable, in my opinion, for, you know, like AoE. So if you're running training grounds, if you're just farming and stuff like that, you might want to use this skill more. It's almost like Doctor Strange's dimensional lockdown or something like that, right? That's basically what I'm looking at the skill like. Over here, we've got dimensional energy as well. This is another really cool skill. Still applies all the same effects, right? It has a lower cooldown and requires stamina cost, and it's targeting multiple enemies. The only thing I don't necessarily care for is that it's in a straight line and it doesn't really track on them. So like, yeah, it's a little bit weird. It is that. And then we have Chaos Judgment, right? So Chaos Judgment, really, really quick skill, really, really low cooldown cost, not a lot of damage, but you can get those effects up in there. But like I said, I would focus mostly on Chaos Fear or Chaos Storm inside this skill right here. Next up, we got Psychokinesis. So we're making our way back to the Hex Energy class, and I really liked all 4 of these skills, bar none, are really good skills. In my opinion, the casting time of them do not seem to be very long. So the animations aren't necessarily long either. This is going to be a really cool, they all have the knockdown skill effects and they all deal relatively decent damage. So I really like Psychokinesis. It's just a really good looking skill. We got the highest guard break is on Hex Meteor, however, and you can see that could be a reason why you want to use that skill. Doesn't even have a relatively high stamina cost either, 24, or a high cooldown. So, and does some pretty decent damage as well. I could see that this skill is quite possibly the better of all of the skills inside there. I just kind of like the way Hex Energy looked for some reason. But like I said, Hex Meteor isn't a bad skill either. I just kind of like, I don't know what it is about Hex Strike that I like so much, necessarily animations, but I like them a lot. Next up, we have Psychokinesis Hex Illusion. So this one has a really high cooldown and a really high stamina cost, but it's really cool seeing the cars being thrown at a character. I just like that it's cars thrown into the character, but the required stamina and the high cooldown was the only reason why I was like, maybe not so much, because even though it's like just a little bit higher than Hex Strike, I don't know. Like I said, though, this is the really cool thing about this character, is there's a lot of skills that she has at her disposal that makes this kit very viable. And like I said, this is one of them where you can see all 4 of the skills basically are really good skills. They have good guard breaks on them. They have good the immobility is there for these for the skills to be used, and they have pretty decent damage on them as well, ranging from as low as 450 to as high as 900% in damage. These are really good skills. It's just going to require some play testing. Now we get into Language of Demise, right? This goes back into her Chaos class skills. So you basically have Language of Demise, and it was Runic Absorption. And if you look through the skills over here, she basically has the Curse of Constraint. And the Curse of Constraint does pretty much the same thing, where it decreases the attack by 25% for 6 seconds when the cursed targets use any attack skills. So when a player is affected by Curse of Constraint, they need to be concerned, I can't really use some of my attacks because they're going to be reduced by nearly a quarter. And it deals damage equal to 20% of attack when a cursed targets use attack skills. So you're using attack skill, right? And your damage is reduced, and you're taking nearly just as much damage for using the skill in the first place. So she doesn't even have to deal the damage to you. You're dealing the damage to yourself by just using the attack. Then we get Inflicts Curse of Weakness for 5 seconds when the skill lands. It makes you unable to dodge for 3.5 seconds when the cursed target uses a dodge skill. So now playing against Scarlet Witch, you're going to have to look for all of these status effects to know, okay, well, is she going to hit me with, did she hit me with Curse of Weakness? Is that status effect applied? So we're going to also deal damage to the target when they use the dodge skill. So it's like, hey, you didn't pay attention Now you're going to deal with these status effects. So the thing I like the most about Language of Demise's Runic Absorption is that it absorbs 15% of damage dealt as HP. I don't think a lot of people are going to get away from using those skills, but you can see how the feasibility for this skill is highly available to players who are playing, you know, PvP, Omega War and stuff like that. This is a really good skill. That doesn't mean that any of the other skills aren't as good. I just happen to like that one the most, right? Especially because it had the absorption side of it. So for instance, Gift of Silence still applies all of the same status effects, except that this one lands does silence for 2 seconds. I don't really necessarily like the silence for 2 seconds. You know, the Language of Demise, Humanity Collapsing, still applies the same skills and nothing really more. Doesn't make it necessarily a bad skill because just the status effects on these skills are, you know, viable in themselves. But again, going into this one, I thought that Runic Absorption was the best one. Then they had Runic Wither in here. This one still applies the silence inside here. But again, it was just one of those things like I thought the best skill overall inside here was Runic Absorption. I think this is going to primarily be the skill that people use if they're using Language of Demise. This is definitely going to make it into my skills just because I think that this is a really, really good skill inside here to have, especially if you're playing any kind of modes with PvP, PvE and stuff like that. Because I think a lot of people aren't going to be paying attention to their dodge, their status effects, especially if they're playing like Alliance Omega War, and to be able to see, I'm getting damage dealt to me for these things right here. Next up, we got Witch's Darkness. This is our first journey foray after 5 skills into her Witchcraft skill. Be prepared that her Witchcraft skills are pretty badass. Now, this one is going to decrease the defense by 25% for, you know, 4.5 seconds when the skill lands. But it's not a bad skill. So you're going to basically be looking at that, right? So so let's take a look at these. So quickly move forward to fire multiple energies. The thing that I like about her Witchcraft skills is this is where she has iframes. So she's going to avoid the targeting, you know, like she can't be targeted while she's in the summoning of skills. I liked Witch's Descent the most out of all these skills. That's the reason why I have that one selected. This one right here decreases melee damage by 15% on Witch's Force Field. Not necessarily a bad skill in and of itself. It deals a pretty decent amount of energy and it deals damage to all other people. So the way I look at this skill is similar to Doctor Strange's Bladed Defense. You're basically doing that kind of damage or whatever. I've seen people use Bladed Defense, but it's kind of one of those weird things. Like, is Captain America trying to strike you? Is, you know, like that's basically the utility of it. Now, it requires you to have some. Now, Witch's Fear is not a bad skill either because I like the fact that, you know what, I'm going to launch several energy spheres at you and deal 793% damage to you, right? Especially with such a low cooldown and a required stamina cost. And it also looks a lot, it reminds me of Thanos' skill that he summons on you inside the invasion as well. And then we finally have Witch's Pursuit as well. This one has a really low guard break, the lowest, but when it lands on the same target, it deals max double guard damage. Now, max double guard damage on the lowest, you know, doesn't quite make sense. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think that of this skill, this one is probably the better of the skills, but that's my opinion. Next up, we've got Hex Release. So we're back to Hex Energy again, right? So inside here, I really liked a couple of skills in here. I don't know why this changed, because the skill that I liked the most in this one, I believe, was Hex Pinpoint. Yeah, I believe it was Hex Pinpoint. It had a guard break for medium, does a knockdown when the skill lands, and drags when the skill lands as well. Really good skill because it's a good pull. Enemies, like, you can use this skill as a great setup is basically what I looked at this skill in, right? Because with this skill, I can literally pull enemies together and then I can cast another skill that's going to deal, you know, damage and then pull them in. So for instance, there's a Witchcraft skill inside here that allows confusion to spread. I could use Pinpoint to spread to gather, you know, targets and then cast that confusion, that Witchcraft skill that will apply confusion and more some. So this is it was supposed to be Pinpoint that I really liked inside here. Nothing wrong, you know, to say with Hex Break. is just, yeah, I just thought the pinpoint was the better of the two skills. Hex Explosion, it's a little situational, which is the reason why I didn't like it as much, because it subdues a target, but the guard gauge is below 50% for 5 seconds, so it has to be below. This gets into like the Doctor Strange thing where he was, you know, you need to break through his guard damage for in order for skills to be applied first. Just a little weird, right? And then we had Hex Energy, Hex Gravity, crashes when the skill lands, press down on targets. I really like this Hex Pinpoint. I think that Hex Pinpoint will work best with some of the other skills in terms of setup, and especially because it pulls enemies into each other. You play with those skills. Then we've got Witch's Tongue. So we've got a couple of skills here that are really good. I think I was playing around with this and it changed out things. The skill that I liked the most from here was really this one right here, which was Death Chain. It applies Confuse for 3 seconds when the skill lands, right? So you can see that, and it teleports behind the enemy and releases energy, you know. But the thing that you're really looking at from this is that you're really looking for the confusion and the fact that it released energy transfer successfully to nearby enemies to spread damage. So in a sense, you can use Pinpoint in order to set up Death Chain, right? So I'd cast Pinpoint and then roll right into Death Chain to get that confusion. The guard break is low, but you notice that the cooldown and the required stamina isn't that long. And when paired up with Hex Pinpoint, you know, you could literally cause some serious damage inside here. Well, not a lot of high damage, but this would be great inside like Alliance or Mega War, right? That's not to say that some of the other skills inside here aren't really cool. I like the effects on these skills, especially with her teleportation. Just really looks cool to me. You know what I mean? They're really cool skills. They're very similar to Doctor Strange's icon skills. So basically being able to summon out on effects and then move in. And now she only has one skill inside Witch Tongue that gives her iframes, and that's going to be Reality Warp. And the really good thing about Reality Warp is that it also recovers a great deal percentage of her ultimate guard gauge. So she manipulates time and space to become invincible, and she recovers the ultimate skill gauge, and then she cannot use the skill when invincible, whatever, right? So the really cool thing about this though is that's a 20% guard gauge recovery. Now there's a high cooldown and there's a high required stamina, but Scarlet Witch is the first character, in my opinion, that has an actually viable ultimate gauge, or that you really probably want to make an effort to focus in. So the two from here is Death Chain and then her ultimate Reality Warp. Take a look at those. Right now we've got Shape of Terror, and I really like Terror Consumption. Right inside here, it creates an illusion of herself. The illusion deals 276% damage upon being summoned, and periodically infuses Scarlet Witch with energy to increase her attack. The effect is amplified upon reaching max stat count, and she is in iframe the entire time while the skill is being used. So you're seeing here is increasing attack by 30% for 10 seconds upon reaching the max stat count. That is freaking cool, right? It's really cool. I think this is going to probably make its way into a lot of kits because it's a really good skill. 25 cooldown, 25 requires stamina, puts it as a good, probably like opening skill or something like that, that you can then rotate into maybe another skill. The fact that she is, you know, an iframe as well is really cool. Then we have Terror Incarnate, another good skill, because this one basically is a companion summon. The summon sticks around for 10 seconds and has 25% of her attack, and then it creates an illusion, the illusion of herself. So that's a really good skill. You know what I mean? The other two skills aren't bad either. You know, like this one decreases movement speed. Terror Assault decreases movement speed by 5 seconds. Not really so keen on that, but you know, it could be good against a character like Spider-Man or Black Widow. Shadowy Terror, this invincibility is just way too short. Becomes invincible for 1 second, she vanishes for 3 seconds, and then she becomes invincible for 1 second, and then she releases a shockwave to nearby enemies and disperses and disappears into shadows. So she has some, like, it's weird. I have to play around with that skill, but of the two skills, inside Shadow Shape of Terror, I really found those two skills, Terror Consumption and Terror Incarnate, to be really good skills. And the fun fucking part about this is that that's literally all her skills. And like I just showed you, there's at least 2 to 3 skills in each of these classes that make her highly viable, like highly viable, whether it's Witchcraft, whether it's Hex, whether it's Chaos. I really like the Hex and the Witchcraft skills the most, in my opinion, but you know, the Chaos skills definitely have viability. It's just that I feel like the Chaos skills play more into PvP oriented gameplay more than they do PvE, so I don't think that I'll be jumping into the Chaos sphere so much as I will jump into Hex and Witchcraft, because I'm a PvE player, and that, you get what I'm saying, man. Like, you get what I'm saying. Like, I feel like Hex Energy is going to be more PvE focused, Chaos is going to be more PvP focused, and Witchcraft will round those out. But I really feel like Witchcraft is going to be like a bread and butter part of your skill build. But you notice the required cost on those. I feel like those are going to be like, you know, these are the damage attacks that I'm using to open. Now, pay attention to Scarlet Witch's Darkhold ability, because it's really weird to read this, but if you notice inside here, there's an effect that is applied when she summons this to every class. So her Hex Energy class, the skill damage is increased by 20 seconds. Her Witchcraft, she decreases the Witchcraft class skill cooldowns by 15% for 15 seconds, regardless of the max value. Pay attention to that. And even her Chaos effect, it increases the status effect duration on a target by 75% for 15 seconds. And notice what it says here: no can guard. No can defend, man. No can defend. And it's dealing a decent amount of damage here, and 1500% damage. That's really cool. So that means that essentially you're now working Scarlet Witch's, you know, her ultimate into rotation because it's needed. I really like Scarlet Witch's toolkit in terms of her skills as well. So that's her skill set inside there. Let me know what you guys think inside there. What have you played around with and tested so far with her? How are you feeling that the class skills play out and things like that? Like, let me know in the comment section what you build. I'm going to be play testing her out. I do believe that she is going to, because she's so foundational and so well built, I feel like I'm going to invest in Scarlet Witch because not necessarily because I want to make her my main, not necessarily because I like the character, just because what they give with the character, I think that is going to be a great barometer. I think her character represents a great barometer for gameplay across the board, because she has such utility to each of the gameplays. Whether or not she shines the way Storm shines inside Invasion, or, you know, the way, you know, Spider-Man and Black Widow shine inside PvP, that's yet to be seen. But I really do believe that she will shine inside those game modes. So I do believe she's a character worth investing in. She's definitely going to be probably like in your top 2 or 3 characters as they switch over to this you know, to this new squad build kind of play. I definitely think you're going to want to invest in her. I've invested a little bit heavily into her. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.